Pretty snazzy, huh?
I gotta tell you, I like PowerPoint presentations.
Hey, Joe, you ready to read the tape?
Sure. My buddy in Nashville said it was 70 there today.
Is it really? Are you supposed to get cold again sometime this week?
No, we got rain the next few days, but not cold rain.
No more cold.
Who messed with my chair?
At this time, the mayor will call to order the special city council meeting and workshop for 5:30 PM, Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021, City Council Chambers at 201 East Nash Street, Terrell, Texas. This time, as usual, we always come in and we have our mask. If you are 6 feet apart, social distancing, you may remove those if you like. We have the partitions between council members, so if you would like to remove your mask, you may do so. This time, Charles, would you please lead us in invocation?
Yes, let us. Our dear Heavenly Father, first, thank you for your son. Thank you for each other. And thank you for the challenges that we faced this week. And thank you for our city employees. Thank you for our fire and police that kept us safe. And all of our city employees that had to brave the weather. We appreciate them, Father. Lead and guide us as we try to do what's right for the city as a whole. We ask all this in your son's name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Martha's got all the red.
Our next item on the agenda is mayor, council, community recognitions and events. In light of the winter storm that we just had last week, I want to take this opportunity to thank not only our staff, our city manager, our work crews, everyone who was involved with answering the call to citizens and responding in a way that makes the mayor and the council proud of each and every one of our city employees. They did an outstanding job given the circumstances. We did so without any injury, to my knowledge. Is that correct, Mr. Sims? And so we weathered the storm, and just wanted to take this opportunity to thank each and every one publicly. Does anybody have any recognitions, events, or if you would like to comment on something good that happened within the community during last week's winter blast, please do so at this time.
Yeah, Mayor, if you don't mind. In fact, tonight on the way here, there's an employee named Kyle, and I'm not sure what Kyle's last name is, but he was working to corner Alamo in Virginia as I came to the city council meeting. And there were times when we as citizens had to work together, and I know Mr. McKessick and Mr. Sims probably don't believe this, but most of the time, we take care of people ourselves, but there were times when we couldn't, and when the city responded, within an hour, things were taken care of. There really was. The communication was great. The people were thankful. I know we couldn't please everybody, but all things considered, looking at our town and our city and how things went was just so much better than a lot of our neighbors around here. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Yeah, Mayor, it's worth noting, we should thank the Terrell Police Department and the Epic Life Church and the First Christian Church for serving as warming centers. I know I stopped by at least one of those venues to talk to the clergy and the volunteers, and they were there with a happy heart, and they did provide shelter for a few people and a few kids that night, and First Christian ended up taking those individuals to breakfast at Denny's the next morning, just to make sure they were okay. So just a big thank you for the warming centers. You know, you just don't want anybody to sleep in a cold house unnecessarily. So, but, yeah, I thought it was a good effort.
Well, thank you, Mr. Harris. Anyone else?
Mayor, I'd also like to thank, in addition to everyone that has been mentioned, our Adopt a Block food pantry, who also provided milk and food for families that were not able to get out and drive to the grocery stores, and were looking at their neighborhood to be able to obtain those over the storm.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. I also want to say that, you know, during the entire time of the winter event, communication lines were open. They were used into the betterment of the community. We had good information coming from Allison Walker, our information officer. Thank you for doing that. Mike, did you have something that you would like to say?
Mayor and Council, I just want to let you know, we appreciate as staff very much everybody's support up here. It means the world for us as staff people, and we're getting positive feedback from council, so we thank you very much for that. We just want to keep working. You got a lot of dedicated folks who work for the city. Some of our department heads will be in front of you over the next few weeks to do some more detailed thanking and kind of explaining some of the stuff that went on. Suffice it to say, right now, you've got a lot of great dedicated employees, and we appreciate them very much. And I will echo what Councilman Whitaker said during his prayer. It's also appropriate when you have a big storm like this, and you think, you know what, there are a lot of people praying for protection for our city, so let's thank God as well. So, and I mean that with all sincerity.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Brady, did you want to say something?
I just want to give special thanks to our fire department. We had some incidents here in District 2. 18-wheeler got stuck in the ditch, and we also had one of our citizens to roll over the ditch as well, and our fire department responded in record time. They did amazing considering the conditions. And I just want to say a special thanks to them and to all our staff. I know Mr. Sims had to carry on a lot during this whole ordeal last week. I just want to give him special thanks, and all of our directors and all the city employees.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Allison, did you want to?
Now, I'm not sure if you mentioned every church that participated, I think.
Would you come forward, because we can't hear you? Thank you.
In addition to the churches that Tim and Charles mentioned, I don't know if anybody said First Baptist Church. They did a warming station, showers, and coffee. And then Rockwall and Bryn, working in conjunction with First Methodist, also did a warming station. And Whiskaway Bakehouse offered eggs, milk, and hot meals to community members that were in need. So,
No,
Thank you, Allison.
Yeah, that's good. And Mayor, I guess it's worth, you know, one of the biggest things is, man, a big shout out to the water staff. A lot of towns had problems in Texas and still have problems. You know, part of it was staffing, part of it was preparation, part of it was keeping power. But we had, you know, a real dedicated team. I know that the guys were working on tractors, you know, when it's snowing and 0 degrees and down in literally the trenches in the mud, making sure that the water stayed on. So those are heroic efforts that didn't happen in every town in Texas. So thank you to that crew, because, and I know that involves special projects and streets, and I know there's a team of people, right, that I'm certainly leaving some out. Mike can throw them in. But really, while it's a big thank you, you know, most of us were in our house warm, and a lot of those guys were working 12 and 15-hour shifts in the mud. So thank you to those guys.
No, that is very true. I did witness a crew on Griffith Avenue, and it was just beginning to get dark, so their night was just beginning. It was cold, they were wet, but they were in action, right? And so again, couldn't be more pleased with everyone's efforts in handling this situation. Our next item on the agenda is to hear remarks from visitors. Do we have any? We have none, so we'll move on to board and commissions. At this time, we have 6.1, discuss and consider planning and zoning board appointments. This will be handled by Dawn.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this item for the Planning and Zoning Commission was tabled from the meeting on February 9th. The board roster is in your packet, along with the applications, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so we're looking at the planning and zoning board. This will fall under Ms. Mayrana Velazquez. Councilwoman, do you have any recommendations?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Gabriel Cabrera from District 5 to serve on the Planning and Zoning Board.
We have a motion from, District 3, Mayrani Velazquez. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Charles Whitaker, District 4. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Item, is there, no, okay.
Well, I'd like to say that, Mr. Gabriel Cabrera has reached out more than once to share his willingness and looking forward to serve on the Planning and Zoning Board and contribute to the community. He is a fire protector engineer. He serves on the Fire Advisory Board member for the North Central Texas Council of Governments. He also has experience with zoning code, and he also volunteers with the Dallas Community Emergency Response Team as well as the East Texas Community Emergency Response Team. Recently, he also was involved in the volunteer efforts here with our vaccination hub. So he is committed to the community from our conversations and is looking forward to serving.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Velazquez. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We have currently in chambers Mayrani Velazquez, District 3, Charles Whitaker, District 4, Tim Royce, District 5, and we have remote Grady Simpson in District 2. Our next item on the agenda is 6.2, discuss and consider zoning board of adjustment appointments. Again, this will fall under Ms. Velazquez. Do you have any?
Yes, Mayor. I make a motion to approve Ashley Fife-Coat Carmona and Matthew Hancock to serve as board members for the Zoning Board of Adjustments.
Do we need to do that one at a time or both, or can we do them together?
Do them together.
Do them together, okay. We have a motion from Mayrani Velazquez, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Tim Royce, Mayor Pro Tem District 5. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor,
Yes.
Mayor, I'd also like to share that I spoke with both community members, Ashley Fife-Coat Carmona and Matthew Hancock both expressed their willingness to serve the community. Ashley Fife-Coat Carmona is a lifelong community member. She has real estate experience, home renovation experience, and also serves on the Terrell ISD Foundation. Matthew Hancock has extensive commercial construction experience and also has been involved with inspections and variances. So I think they'll both serve the board well.
Thank you, Ms. Velazquez. Is there any further discussion? We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a second. All those in favor, let it be known by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion will carry. Item number 6.3, discuss tax increment reinvestment rule number 1, Power Center Board appointments. This will fall under Don.
Yes, and this board falls under,
Ms. Velazquez.
okay. Mayor and council, in your packet, there's a board roster for the tax increment financing reinvestment zone number 1 and the power center. And we have several board members that will be, their expiration date is coming up, their term expiration. And we just wanted you to be aware of this. And we will come back at a later date with applications in the packet for your review.
So just for clarity on there, you've got 2 of the members who have terms expiring in April. Those are the ones appointed by the county. So there are 2 slots in both the Power Center and the TIF Board where the appointments are made by Kaufman County Commissioner Court. So we'll reach out to them separately and let them know that April's their time to make decisions about those appointments. The 2 for your consideration are Mr. Thurman and Mr. Davidson, both of whom have terms that wrap up in March of this year.
So they're termed out and will not be eligible.
The TIF Board is an unusual board because we share those appointments with the county. There are no term limits associated with the TIF Board or the Power Center Board, so you're free to reappoint those 2 individuals or make a change. That's just council prerogative there.
I guess if you have any comments or would like to have input on this, please reach out to Ms. Velazquez and also the city manager, and then we can move forward. We'll be looking at this in March
Yes, sir.
or April.
The council will see the 2 city appointments again in March.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarity. Our next item on the agenda is business items. So 7.1, that is discuss short-term borrowing strategy. This is going to be Mr. Sims.
So, Mayor and Council, I wanted to come up here so it'd be a little easier to kind of talk about this item. You know from your budget time last year that we talked about several different things of being short-term borrowing for us. We've been working quite some time, and I'm glad Mike McKeska's here because he's been the leader on our smart water meter technology. You did a selection there recently, and we're about to get to the point on the smart water meters that we are going to spend money, and a lot of it, to replace all of what we kind of refer to as the cash registers in our system. Whenever we take the old water meters out, put new water meters in, we're really expecting some really good upgrades there in terms of what we get out of the benefit of the information that it will send back to you, sending you a notice that will tell you, hey, there's a water leak, that sort of thing. We think that's a great step forward for us and can really help folks out in the community. So that's one part of the short-term borrowing. That was in your budget already, so that's a planned expense, and your water rates reflect having that cost in the coming years. The next item that we talked about at budget time was to do a short-term borrowing associated with our radio equipment and with some police surveillance equipment. So you've seen the presentation before from Chief McKean and from Shane LaCroix. The radios are a cooperative purchase that we're going to be able to do through the Garland-Mesquite regional system, where we're joined up in an interlocal agreement that you guys approved here recently. If you recall, whenever we voted to approve the Garland-Mesquite radio system agreement, that really brought our procurement cost on radios down from around $1 million to $760,000 or so dollars. So that's part of this short-term borrowing. The other part of this short-term borrowing is the police surveillance package that we discussed at budget time. And so again, that's a camera system for downtown, a mobile camera system, and then the license plate reader technology that is so helpful for the police department. So that's about $1 million of this. The thing that's new and different is something that I'm going to propose to you just barely fits in our ability to do this borrowing, but I think it's a wise step forward for us. Basically, as you've heard before, now that we've done our robotics survey of our street conditions, we really like to take a step forward in that. I can't solve all of those problems immediately, but we do feel like we can put $2 million into this short-term borrowing to do some asphalt work. That's going to cover a good, healthy chunk of streets. We think that we can get maybe 3 miles, maybe 4 miles of really good, high-quality overlays done with around $2 million. I asked our financial advisor to kind of review this a little bit for us, and so I'm going to let Jason Hughes talk for a minute here in a moment. But basically, the idea of the roughly $2 million for the asphalt overlay work is to say, look, let's take some of our streets that we all know are in dire need of help. Let's use our brand-new robotics system where we've got a lot of good science behind picking projects, and let's get in there and let's do a little bit of catch-up work. And if we can squeeze 3 or 4 miles worth of major roadway improvements into this budget, I think that's exactly the thing to do. I provided 2 things here. One is a little analysis of how much capacity we have. Mayor and I talked about this a little bit. Basically, the notion of saying, look, should we really be adding to our short-term borrowing $1.5 million for streets, or could we push that up to about $2 million for streets? So as we've gone through to do that analysis, nothing's perfect because you're projecting property values next year when you do that. So we're only estimating what our property values will be next year. I think if we have a reasonable property value increase between this year and next year, then we are going to be able to fit this with an existing debt profile. And you can see that in the spreadsheet that I provided. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that spreadsheet. So Jason is on the line here. You can see him. Jason, if you could walk council through the page that you provided and ask or let them have a chance to ask questions.
Certainly be happy to. Mayor, Council, good evening. Good to be with you. So as Mr. Sims said, you have in front of you a scenario comparing some different financings. One for what's labeled as scenario 1 for $6.5 million in proceeds, and then scenario 2, which is $6 million in proceeds. So a couple of general comments I would make is this is again a short-term borrowing, but we are limiting the repayment to 10 years, so no long-term, but again a 10-year maximum maturity. The other thing, as you can see on this comparison, is I have separated various projects that Mr. Sims just went through. So that's how it would be provided to the city if you choose to move forward. So that way you can keep it separate and know exactly which repayment sources or revenue sources you're using for repayment. The nice thing about it is we're still at close to historical interest rate lows. So I will tell you that if we were taking bids on this today, we'd probably be 1.8%, maybe up to 2%. And I think that's probably fairly conservative. So it is a good time if you have needs to go out and bond those. If you choose to move forward, you do have a notice of intent to issue COs. This is simply required by state law. Your bond counsel drew this up. It is based on a not-to-exceed amount of $6,750,000, which takes into account kind of the higher number of $6.5 million in proceeds plus cost. This is simply a not-to-exceed number, so we will certainly decrease that down to the actual number, which will take into account proceeds that you need and then actual cost of issuance. Again, within that notice of intent, what is anticipated is if you move forward tonight, you'll have publication in the local paper, and then I would be back in front of you on April 20th. And at that time, I would have a completed transaction. Now that, of course, is still subject to your review and approval. So this is really the first step tonight, and then again, April 20th would be the second and final step if you choose to move forward. So with that, I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions you may have or provide any more detail that you want.
So kind of walk me through why we went from 6 million to 6.5 and not 7. Was 6.5 the amount we felt comfortable with?
Yeah, and I think really it's the second page in here that helps to answer that. So there's a page in your handout that says INS number 1 FY22 fund availability analysis.
Right.
And so this is really just sort of the simple little sketch version of, well, what's affordable for us, okay? let's assume we get a 3.5% valuation increase over tax year, in tax year 2021. That would give us around $100,000 in additional funds. We have a piece of fire equipment that falls off of our debt profile. We're making that payment in FY '21, but we won't make that payment in FY '22. So when we borrow now, our first time that we make a payment is FY '22. And so that shows that $336,000 number. So the borrowing scenarios, we gave you two different ones here. One is the idea that we would borrow that $2 million street overlay catch-up, and then scenario number two is if we were to limit ourselves to $1.5 million. And so you can see there that I think that borrowing scenario one, that's $350,000. I think the interest rate assumption in there is a little on the high side. So if you ask me, I think that you can afford $2 million in your street program and not just $1.5 million. I didn't want to give council the option of being more cautious. I'm just not going to recommend that. I think this is the time to go ahead and squeeze what we can get in there. Interest rates are low enough, and I think we'll be just fine with that $2 million number. So that's the second page in there. If you go back over to the first page is the one that says Hilltop Securities on the bottom of it. That's the one Jason provided. And so basically the scenario one, $6.5 million proceeds, that's the water meters for $3.5 million, the radios and police department equipment for $1 million. That's radios, by the way, just to be clear, for fire department, emergency management, so on down the line. And the street overlay package of $2 million. And so you can see all the math that Jason provided for you there. Again, we're very comfortable that this fits within our borrowing profile. And as Jason said, there's always a little math that goes into, well, we want to make sure we pass a resolution that's slightly higher because there are costs associated with going out to borrow, and so that's what Jason was explaining. If you say, yes, we're comfortable with the $6.5 million mark, then you pass the resolution that lists that 6.75 because that gives Jason enough working room to take care of issuance costs and some of the other legal costs associated with this project.
Jason, thank you for the numbers, the way that it's laid out here. You can clearly see what each one is and the amount due, so that's good. I want to thank Mike for giving us the option on the $2 million. I think that's the one that most of us are going to feel comfortable with. Again, money's at a record low, so if we're going to do something, this would be the time. And this doesn't go into what we're normally going to see on a year-to-year.
Great clarification. Thank you very much. So this is not this year's set of projects. Glenn is out to bid on this year's set of projects, and this isn't next year's maintenance program. When you get to the point in FY or making your FY '22 budget, we'll have a whole fleet of pay-as-you-go projects for you to do during our annual maintenance cycle there. So yes, sir, the idea is let's infuse into the streets an extra $2 million that's above and beyond what we have been doing in terms of annual maintenance. So we'll still do this year's annual maintenance, we'll still do next year's annual maintenance. We're just adding this $2 million because goodness knows we've got a lot of street work to get done. I guess the other clarification to make there is, remember, this is a briefing tonight. Feel free to take it back, mull it over, think about it. Your opportunity to vote is next week. When you vote to pass the resolution, then all of that timetable that Jason mentioned starts from there. So I would expect that, as Jason said, it's close to the end of April when all this wraps up, and that allows staff to move forward very quickly. The other thing I asked Jason to put into the resolution, which he and the bond counsel were able to do, is some language that says, hey, if we incur some expenses after the passage of the resolution, but before we receive the money, that those are eligible expenses to reimburse with your borrowing proceeds. So, for example, if we go ahead and initiate our purchase of the Garland Mesquite Radio System Partnership radios, we could actually do that a little before those proceeds come in and then just get reimbursed there. So a little other important nuance.
Right. So, council, this is a response to each and every one of us wanting more things done in the streets. This will give us the ability to do that. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Mike or Jason at this time? And if you like, you can take and review it and then get back with Mike. Or, it'll be up for discussion when we have our one-on-one lunches as well. Okay?
Good.
Anyone? All right. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda, discuss and consider resolution number 1006, a resolution of the City of Terrell, of the City Council of the City of Terrell authorizing the funding for downtown building renovations. Mr. Sims?
So, Mayor and Council, you don't often get agenda items for your consideration that have already been approved by two different boards, and that's what you've got tonight. The Anderson Building and the Griffith Building are the proper names for two buildings often known in Terrell as the Hard Bodies Building and the Pawn Shop. We have a new buyer who has come in to purchase those, and that buyer and his investment team wish to renovate them, rehabilitate them, and make them some great shining examples of retail downtown, restaurant downtown, boutique hotel downtown, additional loft living downtown. Staff has taken this partnership forward to the Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation, talked to them about it. We took it forward to the tax increment refinance zone, talked to them about it. Both of those boards were favorable to vote for the partnership. Each one of them is putting a substantial investment into it. In addition to those investments, we also want to make sure that we're clear that this also includes not just the TIF funds and the paddock funds that are all listed and described in here. This also includes our hotel occupancy taxes that will be from the boutique hotel, and it also includes some of the retail sales taxes coming off of the project. And then it also includes the fact that we'll use our utility fund as we rip up the North Alley here soon. As part of that project, we'll be able to do some improvements associated with the grease trap for this business and making sure that some of those details get done so they can really operate that. We've talked about this a couple of times, and I've briefed you more than once on it. It bears reminding that if we were not already in progress in doing the North Alley project through our Texas Water Development Board borrowing and the South Alley through our Texas Water Development Board borrowing, that this developer would just walk away. This is not something that you could do physically unless those alley projects were in the queue and ready to go. The developer's also very excited to be putting something next to the planned renovation of the McElroy building and turning that into the BFTS Museum. So that's part of our partnership as well here. I don't want to lose sight in that. They needed to hear, as a private developer, that we were putting our biggest tourist attraction downtown, and they were excited to hear that, and that was part of helping them make the decision to be here. So that's kind of an overview. We've talked about some of the details quite a bit. Rather than take you through every detail here, I'm going to give you an overview. Resolution 1006 starts on page 31. It talks about basically attaching to it in an authorization resolution format the approvals already provided by both the Paddock Board and by the TIF Board. So you can see a Tory Lucas signature in there and a John Davidson signature in there as their directors of their boards. It also lists out exactly what those dollar amounts will be, and it provides the language that we've used before about authorizing the city manager to move forward and the mayor to sign the final version of that agreement. If you go deeper into this, you can see that there's a development agreement hiding way back here. I'm going to get my page number correct. It's agenda item page 44. That is the proposed City of Terrell development agreement with Pena Holdings for the Anderson Building remodel and reuse partnership. It follows the same template we've used before for different development agreements. So if you get in here, you can see that there's a section on page 3 page 3 of the agreement, which is agenda item page 46, that gives you your company obligations and lists all of the things the company needs to do. Obviously, it just starts right on in there talking about renovations of the building and getting it up and ready to go. Then, after 2 full pages of talking about company obligations, you get over to agenda item page 48. There's the city obligations, and it lists out what we'll be doing. And again, it's the things that we've talked about before: tax increment finance district, paddock funding, paddock reimbursement. If you keep going through there, then you'll also find that there is an optional partnership opportunity for them to do some more work on a parking structure, or a surface parking option for them. That's described on agenda item page 51. Agenda item page 52 is our side of the city parking partnership. And again, that's if they want to construct a surface lot associated with that. Most of the rest of it is format that you've seen before, so I'll kind of time my comments up there and see if council's got any questions.
All right, thank you, Mike. So this was the project that we've been talking about for some time with the Lewis Pena Holdings LLC. We asked our partners, the paddock board, the TIP board, to look at it and to agree on what they're willing to do versus what the city's going to do. And the partnership started taking place, and everybody's playing their part, and this is going to be a big part of what the downtown area will look like moving forward. This is just the beginning, and we hope that it'll allow it to get legs and begin to feed on itself and move forward for our downtown and what we all envision that to be, right?
Yes, sir.
Correct. So does anybody have any comments or questions?
Mike, is there a timeline, and it's probably in the developer's agreement, but is there a timeline for the reimbursement from the paddock board or city?
Yeah, great question. So I'll talk about the TIF one first. The tax increment finance funds are associated with property value increases in the Anderson building only. And so the Griffith building, there isn't an incentive of TIF money on the Griffith building. There's a requirement they do things to the Griffith building, but there's not the property values there. So you got to get forward to get a certificate of occupancy for the various uses on the inside of the Anderson building, and then only after they pay their taxes on the Anderson building, and we look at the difference between what they are now and what they may be in the future. Remember, we talked about that spreadsheet that showed that right now they're on the tax rolls for about $350,000. We expect that by the time all of this renovation gets done, they'll be on the tax rolls for over $2.5 million. That creates the famous increment that we need in our tax increment financing district. So that's our reimbursement after the work is done. The next side of this is the Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation expenses. And basically the strategy there is to take it on a step-by-step basis. One step will be, for example, asbestos removal. So they'll have to get in there, remove all the asbestos. Once they remove all the asbestos, the city takes a look at it. We'll obviously have our building official, our city engineer, take a look at it, declare that, yep, they really did all the paperwork correctly and they did the work correctly to remove the asbestos. Then they get reimbursed $75,000 for asbestos removal. There's another step similar to that that's associated with the exterior remodel. So that's going to be like windows and awnings and anything safety related on the outside of the building, of which there are a couple of issues on the outside of the building we really want to get taken care of. So when they complete that step, that's $150,000 reimbursement. The next step after that is probably the elevator and the stairs. They have to do a complete taking out. I've made this joke before. I should stop telling this joke. Charles will get mad at me. If I ever wanted to kill Charles Fenner, I had the chance, because he and I were touring the building late last year, and by golly, that elevator is just one big open chasm. It is a very unsafe situation right now. And Charles and I went up, took a look at that, and said, man, we need to get away from that, because that is a structural problem. So anyhow, that's a $75,000 incentive. So there's just a series of stepwise increases that they have to do. in order to earn each step of the way.
And then an additional question is, and of course, the buildings are the major project, but there is a downtown park included in this. So is there any language in here that does encourage them to produce the park within a certain amount of time? I know that there's triggers. I'm sure there's a trigger for this. And if the company doesn't trigger that in a timely fashion,
Yes, so let me kind of, without kind of pointing to the legalese of it, I'll just kind of describe it in parts. The basis is to say, okay, you guys, the developer, go forward, and as you renovate and open the Griffith building, which famously has the wall with the ugly pawn shop logo painted on it, as they get in there and renovate the building, they then also renovate the park according to specifications that the paddock board reviews, and then they deliver both of those things at the same time. And there's a timetable for that. So knowing that everything doesn't work out as planned, step one is we have a plan. Do the Griffith building and the pocket park at the same time, and that's the preference. Let's see if that can work out. Knowing that everything doesn't work perfectly, there is an option in there for the city to basically say, you know what, we think you're taking too long in the park. We're going to deliver it ourselves, and we're going to take that incentive money away from you. And I'm going to describe that basically as doing what we did with the American Way extension earlier, I don't know, 6, 12 months ago, whenever that was, where we basically look at the development agreement and say, you know what, it's advantageous for us to move forward faster, so there's a provision that allows us to take over the park and do it as our own choice. And then there's also I'll call it a feel-good, get-started-quick option there, which I shouldn't call an option. It's basically to say, look, guys, whenever we sign this thing, we're just going to give you a very limited period of time to get the wall painted with something generic and get just a little bit of love out there for that park so that it is not looking decrepit and the side wall doesn't look bad for an extended period of time. So we have a little bit of clean up the park type work that they have to do very early in it. I'm not going to call that, building a park. Sure. I'm going to call that cleaning up that zone. And so there's a bit of language in there for that as well. One of the things that if that answered your question, I'm going to bounce to another topic, and that is one of the things that your paddock board did and that the TIF board did was both of them put an additional $75,000 into the project to do things in the neighborhood. And basically, that's a transfer over to the city council to say, okay, paddock board pre-approves, TIF board pre-approves $75,000 from each of those boards coming over to the city council so that as we identify what I'll call small-scale things that need to get done to make the neighborhood look good, that is an eligible thing to do. So for example, having a little bit more asphalt parking in the south alley right abutting the pocket park. Hey, that's a simple thing, but now we have a place to charge that to. Taking out some of the trees that don't necessarily look the best along Adelaide and replacing those with trees that do look good. Okay, great, we can do that because your TIF board and your paddock board are providing some spending accounts for us to use to make those improvements. So I think that's an important part of this as well.
Okay. Anyone else? Nope, we're good. Thank you, Mike.
Yes, sir.
This is a discuss and consider item, so is there a motion?
Mayor, make a motion that we approve Resolution 1006 as presented.
We have a motion from Tim Royce, Mayor Pro Tem District 5. Is there a second?
Mayor, I second.
I said,
We have a second from Mayor Ronnie Velasquez, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Item number, item number 7.3, discuss and consider final plat, FP 21-01 for lots 5, 6, 7, Block 5 for the Crossroads at Terrell, Phase 2A, along with plat Crossroads Parkway will be extended throughout the frontage of the property. This is going to be Charles Fenner.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you have a plat of several lots, three lots that consist of about 23 acres. The way they're dissecting, you should have it packaged. This is the area over here, that's lot 1. There's another area right
Yes.
here. And then there's an area right here. And that'll be, if you can recall, that's the pond area. And this up here is the apartment complex. Here. So just for your reference there. And I'll talk a little bit about it. So it's lot 5, 6, and 7 of block 5, along with the Crossroads Parkway being extended throughout the frontage of the property. So that right-of-way is being platted is about an acre, a little less than an acre. The additional acres, lot 5 is about half acre, lot 6 is 10 acres, and lot 7 is about 11 acres, and that's where you see the pond. So the total is approximately 23. So the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council approved the construction plat. I think the council approved it sometime in June of last year, of 19. And the council approved it thereafter. That at the time, the plat consisted of lot 5, lot 6, and just 2 lots at the time. However, through further planning, they figured that they needed to include a little bit more on the drainage side and include the pond into this, the detention pond into this actual plat. So the construction plat was approved, and now we bring it forth as a final plat with the additional tracks and including the pond. And this happens quite a bit when you're dealing with these bigger developments and mixed-use development type business projects. So essentially, the construction plat for Phase 2A is being amended into the final plat and include Lot 7 and 5 on top, in addition to the other acreage that we were just talking about. So you'll have Phase 2A, lots 5, 6, and 7, Block 5, being .95 of right-of-way and the additional 22 acres as property for the 3 separate lots. P&Z did recommend approval. There wasn't anything we had to do, and it's just before you now for approval.
So was that a unanimous?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So council, again, this is a final plat. It's met all of the requirements by state law, and it's just us to do our administrative portion of it. Is there any questions of Mr. Fenner? Hearing none, the mayor will entertain a motion. Thank you, Mr. Fenner.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Is there a motion on item 7.3, the final plat?
Yes, Mayor, may I make a motion, this is Councilman Simpson, may I make a motion that we approve item 7.3?
We have a motion from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Charles Whitaker, District 4. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Our next item on the agenda is item 8.1, discuss City Hall renovations update. Mr. Sims.
So, Mayor and Council, we are getting pretty excited around here because we're making a lot of very, very good progress with our remodel efforts. As you can see, we've got the water utility area much better shape. That crew is able to get some real work done over there. One of the things I've wanted to do for years and years is provide a place for people who really just need to sit down and talk through what sometimes are some pretty tough medical issues and pretty tough personal issues related to water bill. Those folks have a place to sit down with our utility manager now. Those conversations used to have to be out in the lobby, so that was not a favorable environment at all. I think the new lobby glass looks a lot better, much more professional appearance for us all. We do have a major step of flooring yet to do and some ceiling tile cleanup yet to be done, so those are coming soon. I hope that folks like the color of the brick, because by golly, once you paint brick, you better like it. And I think we ended up looking really good there. So I want to thank Allison and Dawn. I want to thank Elmira. They were the crew that really put a lot of thought into that. And in fact, Charles Fenner's also been secretly helping us out with that as well. So very much appreciate all of that good work. I'm still over in this small office over here, but the water utility crew, Dawn, Elmira, and Allison are all in the right places that they need to be, so that's a great thing. That opens up better customer service for us because we can use the lobby for a bit of an information center now. We are probably a week and a half away from turning this room into a high-tech room. We have Carousel coming. Carousel had some things that were back ordered partly due to the weather situation, so we had to put their start of their project off a little bit. One of the things that we realized is that as we work with Carousel, we want to really prep for something that we're not doing in this renovation, but that we've wanted to do for quite some time with a renovation. And I'm going to come over here because it's kind of a visual thing to explain. So this goes back, by the way, to the legacy of Tommy Spencer. So if anybody's watching on the video feed out there, we are going to thank the legacy of Tommy Spencer for this idea. And that is the notion that we really don't have a handicap ramp up for the city council. And in order to do a handicap ramp, this side over here of the building, over on Dawn's city secretary side, is really the only feasible place to put it because of the door situation over here on the other side of city council. So how do you cope with that? How do you deal with that? That means that this slot over here on the end really needs to be a spot that if we happen to have a council member who is wheelchair bound, that we would want to put that council member in that position after building a handicap ramp over here on this side. So why are we worried about this now? We don't want to install all of the new electronic equipment and tie Dawn to being on this side when really we need to move Dawn to this other side over here. And so part of what you'll see as this carousel project gets going is just a little bit of a rearrangement. And all of us who've been, Mayor, you were on council back in 04, 05, you're going to find this confusing because the John Ronswell spot's not in the right spot anymore. We're going to flip that traditional spot. So Dawn will be on the other side after all of this carousel project gets done, and we'll kind of resort where everybody is so that everybody's got a good place to be. But we're confident that that can get done, and that can be a nice, effective little change for us. And I'll get lost. I'm sure I'll sit in the wrong place, but we'll get Dawn and her computer set up in the right place. Many of you don't know that there is a little alcove behind Tim Royce, and there's enough room over there to do everything we need to do with the electronics side of it, and hopefully make that a nice little setup over there on that side. That also means that we'll be able to just sort of remove this cabinet side over here, which will actually make the installation a little bit more straightforward. So that's another byproduct of this. I'll come to you during our budget process for FY22, and I'll have an estimate for you on doing the handicap ramp and redoing the carpet in this room, because I think those are a couple of steps that are long overdue as well. So nothing definitive today to vote on or anything like that. I just want to kind of keep you up to date with the project. It helps enormously in a wide number of things, even things like keeping food orders going and that sort of thing is much more efficient now, and you'll see a little bit of a change soon in how we do food orders because now we can kind of rework how we use the Tommy Spencer room and make that process a lot easier and a lot more straightforward. So you'll see some improvements coming soon in several of those areas. And then lastly, as that carousel project gets going, we will have a TV in the lobby, which will provide messages, Spanish and English, telling folks instructions about how to deal with our lobby and what they need to do to get customer service. Much more what you would typically see in a large office complex where there's basically an information center and then a window that you can walk up to, because the utility billing clerks will be providing that customer service that Brandy used to provide at an information desk format. So all of this possible because council was willing to support our rework. And by the way, all of it also possible because you were willing to support our change in the phone system. That's been very helpful. So between Carousel, the IT system here, the phone system, thank you very much for those improvements because it does a lot of good, meaningful work for us with what we can do with customer service. So that's your update. Happy to answer any questions about it.
Mike, are we going to address possibly the lighting situation in the council chambers and the acoustics? Will that be?
I'm going to say yes, because I probably didn't describe it very well when I just say carpet. I always notice the carpet because it needs a lot of help, but yes, sir. I'm meaning we need to take a deep breath and address more than one topic in this room. Yeah, and I think that's the right thing to be doing for the FY22 budget. We have this laundry list here of our restrooms for guests are not in good shape, so they need to be tackled in a future budget year. And then also the council chamber has a list, and we'll need to deal with that.
I think the renovations have gone well. The whole purpose of doing a lot of it was so that we could become more efficient as a city and more friendly for our customers and visitors that have business here at City Hall. I think we've accomplished that. Y'all done a great job. Thank you. Does anybody have any comments, questions?
Just happy it's going.
Yeah, you got to keep it moving. Y'all have
Yes,
done a
sir.
great job. We can always improve and be better. Good job, man.
Yes, sir.
Our next item on the agenda is to discuss strategic plan overview. Again, Mr. Sims.
So, Mayor and Council, there's a schedule of strategic plan steps in your packet. I won't go over that and berate you with it, although I am going to say let's think of it as being fluid. I think I'll probably rework who we're going to see next week as we're getting progress made on our strategic plan. So with your permission, Mayor, I'm just going to just jump right on into the meat of this. And I want to invite, where is he? There he is, Jay Ayers. Jay Ayers has our first of our 3 presentations tonight. Again, this is designed to be interactive. Pardon me for the awkwardness of getting business done first, but that was kind of what happened with our snow day.
Yep.
So we've done some business, and now let's do some thinking about the future. Under the heading of 3-year strategic plan, the first one to talk about is the 3-year strategic plan for housing services.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to talk to you today about the Housing Department's strategic plan for FY22, 23, and 24. Whenever I start off these discussions, I'd like to start off with our mission statement and objectives. I'm going to just read it verbatim as presented in the PowerPoint. But our mission aligns with the United States Housing and Urban Development. That's the regulatory, the federal regulatory agency that we are responsible to reporting to and administering the any program that we receive funds for, including the Section 8 program, which is a big one. But back to it, the initiative to help provide quality, affordable homes in our community. In pursuit of this initiative, we hope to create a strong, sustainable, and idyllic environment our families can be proud of. Our objectives is strengthen the housing market to bolster the economy and protect consumers, meet the need for quality, affordable rental homes, utilize housing as a platform for improving quality of life, build inclusive and sustainable communities free from discrimination. So if we go to the next slide, one of the major success that we've had with y'all approving a few changes to our admin plan for a long time. We just used the paper applications for bringing applicants onto the program with the waitlist check, which is a component of Housing Pro, the software that we use to regulate the Section 8 program, the Housing Choice Voucher program. We were able to go live in December, and we received approximately 3,000 applicants. And I guess for the first time, we were able to pull that many applicants in over a month. The last time it closed, it was in 2016, September 16th, 2016. And they received approximately 2,000 applications, and it took well over 2 years to get to that mark. What I love about waitlist check is we are able to open and close whenever we need to. So right now, whenever we closed and did the lottery, we took 600 applicants from the 3,000 that applied, and now we're currently working on getting them leased up onto our program. And let's see what else I want to say about waitlist check. And in the wake of COVID-19 as well, really wanted to eliminate the person-to-person contact. So it's been real beneficial in that aspect, people being able to apply online and ask any questions that they need through our online portal. And so far, we've did eligibility interviews for over 30 applicants, and that's at the end of January. Right now, they're currently in the process of being briefed and looking for housing here in Terrell.
So Jay, remind me, how does the lottery work? Is it an online, does the wait list check system do the lottery? Does an employee kind of handpick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 every fifth person? How does that work?
Well, whenever they fill out the application, we have 3 preferences that actually weigh some applicants heavier than others, pertaining to whether they're disabled, a disabled family, and that's when your head of household is disabled, you're a family with children, or you're elderly. Someone that meets all 3 of those preferences will weigh heavier than others that don't. They may only have one preference. And what the lottery does in waitlist check, it actually it's a random process, but it also takes into account the preferences whenever the lottery is taking place. So if somebody meets all 3 preferences, their chances of actually being picked is higher than somebody else's whose preferences is not as, that doesn't meet those 3 preferences. And it's all done through the software, which is excellent. So.
Thank you. So it's just basically statistics working in the background.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a computer program, and it's just randomly picking people. And it's kind of like, like the lotto, pretty much. The more tickets you have in the hat, you have a better odds of getting pulled. So.
And with what percentage of individuals that apply would you say were from the city of Terrell?
Oh, I haven't checked into that yet. I normally pull that report every so often, but what I'll do, I'll pull that report. It's not hard to do, and I'll let you know exactly how many was from this area.
What about from the 30 applicants? Do we know kind of what percentage of those individuals may be city residents already?
I mean, I can't tell you until I actually look into it. But what I have noticed is we've gotten people from all over. You got people from New York and California. Everybody doesn't need everywhere, so you're going to get a wide variety of applicants from all over. So.
Right. I'd be interested in knowing what the statistics look like and see if there's an opportunity to market the housing, next time the housing waste list opens. So if you could share those with Mike, and if Mike could share those with us, please.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I can do that. Another thing that I also wanted to touch on is We brought in a housing manager. You all met her, Denise Simon. It's been kind of a curve for her, going from Garland, a much larger agency, to City of Terrell, where you have to wear several hats. So I've been in the process of training her, and she's coming along just fine. I think she should be good to go, and I can just pull away completely probably in the next month or so, but she's coming along pretty good. So let's go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about the strategic goals. In this map, you will see our current jurisdiction. Our current jurisdiction for the housing program is outlined in red. In blue is the ETJ. What I wanted to discuss here is we've been getting a lot of port-ins from other agencies inquiring about our jurisdiction and what exactly we cover. A lot of people that come to Terrell automatically assume we cover all of Kaufman County, but we don't. And sometimes when they find that out, they decide, hey, I'm not coming because you don't cover that area. But other agencies, they've kind of inserted themselves in surrounding areas, Garland, Mesquite, and a few others in particular. They've actually moved into Forney, administering the program there. But for our agency, I just feel like with us being the focal point pretty much of Kaufman County, it'll be a good idea to expand our jurisdiction moving forward to cover a little more area, possibly in Windmill Farms and Forney. I've actually talked to Denise about it. With her being from Garland, she was familiar with the jurisdiction of Garland, and they've actually covered parts of Forney. So that's something we definitely should look into. And this answers the question, why expand our jurisdiction? It increases the participants' housing selection, and increases the lease-up rate for our program. The lease-up rate is very important to how much administrative funding that we receive from HUD, which gives us an opportunity to do more things within the community, maybe start certain programs in-house to help people around the community. It creates healthy competition between landlords, thereby promoting upgrades to units. The thing here is if participants on the program, if they find that there's a better housing in surrounding areas, they're gonna flock to that first. But then, if the landlords, because we have a bunch of landlords that have property on the program, if they get word of that, that's gonna cause them to try to upgrade and do a better job of upgrading their units to compete with those individuals on the outside. It prevents administrative funding from being lost to other housing authorities that cover the areas. This is the conversation that I was having about port outs. What happens is whenever somebody ports out to another agency, there's that agency, the receiving agency, has the ability to either administer the participant coming into their jurisdiction or bill. In the administering process, they pretty much absorb them to their program, so nothing is actually lost. But if they decide to bill us, well, we lose money that we could be using to house people here in our jurisdiction, And additionally, we have to pay them administrative fees for administering that person on the program. It prevents loss of housing assistance funding for families within in our coverage area, and I just discussed that. These are the areas that we've been considering: Windmill Farms, Travis Ranch, Kaufman, Poetry, Forney, Heartland, and some other unincorporated areas.
Hey, Jay, I feel like I have a question that would fit at the end of this segment.
Okay.
So just jurisdiction. Do jurisdictions, I don't want to use the word claim, but once you say, hey, we would like to administer a program in Windmill Farms, does that mean Terrell has the sole?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Or vice versa, I think, right?
Yeah, think of it like this. Right now, you have people in Kaufman who apply to come to Terrell, and their only housing selection is housing in Terrell. If we open up so that our landlords in Terrell have to compete with landlords in Kaufman, that means somebody in Kaufman might actually stay in Kaufman on the program because we've inspected a house down in Kaufman and said, okay, that house is okay, or whatever rental unit might be down in Kaufman. So if we expand our geographic area, we're taking people we're already serving. Because you can apply from, as Jay said, anywhere in the United States and say, I'm going to be here. So the larger our geographic area, the easier it is for folks who need housing to find housing that really suits them just the way they want it, as opposed to, well, it only is a housing unit strictly within our city limits.
Okay. And let's say we expanded jurisdiction. Does that mean more dollars for the program, or are you shoring up the dollars in your program?
We're showing up, and the thing is when you expand your jurisdiction like that, anytime there's an opportunity to bring in more vouchers, we can do that. The big thing there is we can help more families, and additionally, we'll receive more administrative funding. With those administrative funds, as I was discussing earlier, you can do a lot in the community. We can also pick little projects, renovation projects here around the city, and just little things here and there that we can use or that we can do with that administrative funds, because it's not restricted funding. We can do anything that we want to with those funds.
So I'd like to be clear too. It is your opinion that you feel like it would be advantageous to us as a mayor and council to move forward with expanding our jurisdiction. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's your staff recommendation moving forward with this, okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So is there an expectation to receive more vouchers? I just want to be clear on what is the goal.
Yeah.
And I hear the shoring up, but is the housing department in Terrell trying to gain more vouchers?
Yes, that's my plan. I would like to gain more vouchers so we can help more families. Additionally, with the administrative funding, I would like to do more in the community. Because right now, the monies that we receive is pretty much enough to cover our expenses, but I would definitely love to build up that reserve so we can do a whole lot more.
And I'll say it slightly differently, which is to say we have available 435 maximum vouchers right now.
458.
458, pardon me. 458 right now. We seldom get all the way to 458. I think we would do a better job of fully distributing our 458 if we could place those people in areas other than strictly our own city limits. If we can then start doing that, I think that it is a beneficial thing for us to gain additional housing vouchers, because we will have greatly expanded the geographic area of rental houses that we can put those folks. And so I think you might be jumping forward to, well, wait a minute, what's my net here, right? which is a great math question. I would say that's why this is a good strategic plan conversation that we don't finish having right now. We think that this is the goal to go to. This would take city council action to do these steps. And so I think you're asking a great question of, well, can you give me more meat on the bone here? And I would say Jay and I owe you that more meat on the bone before you actually take that action. You see what I'm saying? That,
Yes.
Yeah. From a big long-term goal planning standpoint, over the next 3 years, when Jay and I talked about it, we felt like this was an important item to put first, because the other goals we've seen and heard council ask for, homeownership programs, for example, those are things we can't unlock until we have a large enough a housing department to have the administrative funding necessary to do those things. So we hear a lot from council and from the community, gee, can't you do something more in housing other than just the voucher program? We'd like to get there, and this is an impediment. And so we got to get through this jurisdiction issue before we're ever going to be able to have a robust enough program to entertain that next question.
Okay, thank you.
And that's where I'm also struggling to understand, so I like the word you used there, Mike, unlock. Is it that we have to expand to specific, maybe not necessarily geographical area, but the population within that geographical area? Or, how many units, how many housing units are in those geographical areas? What is it that helps you receive or get to that next step of administrative funding that then allows you to spend those funds in other places than just kind of the day-to-day activities that you're currently doing?
I think, if I answer your question correctly, just let me know and I can try to answer that for you. But I'm gonna just give you my viewpoint with this expansion, expanding the jurisdiction. Right now, Terrell is in a transitional phase. What I notice is a lot of older homes are being knocked down, rebuilt, and being sold. For the program to survive, and that's number one, you're gonna have to have a bigger selection to choose from when it comes to housing. Because what I am noticing is people that come onto the program here, they're having a lot of trouble finding adequate housing because they get 60 to 90 days to lease up. If they don't do it within that time frame, it's pretty much over.
They lost.
Yeah. By expanding, you give them a bigger selection to choose from. From what I understand, Windmill Farms is very heavy with Section 8. It's an older community. It was new at first, but now it's starting to get old, and people are moving out and just renting properties out. I've went out to several locations, apartment complexes, older ones that have been renovated, inquiring about those particular properties, accepting Section 8 vouchers, but nobody is really biting on that right now. Off the highway, right before you get to Gateway, they built this brand new apartment complex, and that's something that I've really been eyeing because, everybody that I've talked to, Texas Inn Apartments, they've made big strides to to upgrade their units, and they're kind of reaching their max on the Section 8 program. They don't want to accept anymore. But I think as far as just keeping the program healthy, that's probably the best thing to do. It also creates other opportunities for other programs, in addition to just having, and I can't really reiterate it enough, but it increases the ability, based on the CMAP rating, to increase our administrative funding. So, and that's
Let me say, I think the philosophy is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I think what council's looking for, which I will promise you we will bring back to you before we ask you to vote on anything, is more of the analytical analysis that the two council people to my right are talking about. because I think that we owe you something along the lines of, well, am I going to go from 458 to 4 million? Of course not. Am I going to go from 458 to some higher number, and that's our threshold number? You guys are asking great analytical questions, and my comment is, we will make sure that before we move forward in this direction, we bring you just a couple of more analytical answers to that. You know, we're on big picture tonight, but we'll bring you some more details before we move forward on this.
Yeah, and the thing is with HUD is, with the funding, if they have any vouchers available, the housing authorities can apply for those. Not saying that you'll get as many as you want, but you have the opportunity to bring in additional vouchers if that's what you plan on doing.
If it's our goal to help these families find
exactly.
housing, then this is the option, the
Yeah.
better option for us moving forward.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Tyler covers several areas outside of their city. Oh,
Okay, we got a lot to cover, so let's go, let's move on to the next one.
I took us in the weeds, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's go. Move on.
okay, next slide. The next thing that I've been working on, and I've just communicated with other housing authorities, no sense in recreating the wheel. I just want us to be more efficient from a software standpoint. With IDEA, something that I plan on looking into here pretty soon is, eliminating a lot of the paperwork that we have. We have tenants that have, 3 or 4 files, probably about that big. With IDEA, it will pretty much eliminate a lot of the paperwork, trying to find different documents, and I think it'll be exceptionally a good decision to help out my caseworkers and Denise with her work duties. Something else that I'm looking into adding here is the MRI Assistance Connect. It pretty much is a portal that brings your applicants, tenants, and property owners to a central location. The applicants, they can make updates in that portal and anything that they need to do to ensure that they're admitted on the program. And we've had a lot of issues with mail in the past, and that kind of eliminates, that issue because they actually receive an email and text message and things of that nature. And with the tenants and property owners, it's pretty much the same for them. The property owners can list the property, they can check payments that they should be receiving, and things of that nature.
Is this the only program that exists with that HUD allows you to use? Are there multiple programs? And then really the reason I'm asking this question is to also find out if individuals who speak a language other than English will be able to access it in their own language.
Yes, it actually has a feature where you can actually switch from different languages, and I'll have to commend MRI for that. They really put a lot of thought into all of their software. They have many different components of housing software. So.
Thank you.
Okay, I've talked about this program in the past. This is something that I really want to work on in the next 3 years, is bringing the Family Self-Sufficiency Program back. What it does, it creates, gives the tenants an opportunity to become independent from our program. The great thing about this program is it gives them an opportunity to put money in an escrow account, so they can save up that money for as long as they need to, and they can use that money to, they can put a down payment on a house, or, however they choose to use that money. But what I would love to do is, in tandem with that program, bring the ACV home ownership program along as well, which, would actually help them make a down payment on a house and, purchase a home. These are the other programs that we'll be looking into in the next 3 years. The HCV home ownership program. We're going to be looking at community development block grants, the Section 3 program, and home investment partnership program. And what I like to touch on is as our jurisdiction expands, our staffing will have to increase as well.
So Mayor and Council, let me just pause here. Each of the department head presenters are giving you sort of this detailed recap. This recap is what would actually go into the strategic plan. And so I don't want Jay to re-present it, but this is basically a summary of the things you just heard from Jay. So this is your opportunity to say, okay, hey, I want to make a couple of notes on this. Maybe you want Myra to print one off for you. You can write on it, whatever you need to do. We've got several weeks ahead of us before we have to vote on any of this. So take these individual summary pages as they come forward to you and use that as your way to give us some feedback, okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jay. Next item is going to be discuss Finance Department strategic plan. This again is DeMarcus Harris.
So Mayor, Jay is going to tackle the first couple of slides in this one. Then I'm going to talk about, I'm going to use Jay's presentation time to also talk about some of the city's overall big picture financial goals. And then Jay will come back up after that and talk about his operations of his department. So take it away, Jay, and then I'll jump in.
Starting off with the mission statement, the Finance Department's mission is to account for all monies received by the city and prepare the monthly financial report, record and report all financial transactions, assist the preparation of the annual budget and annual audit, and prepare special reports for the city manager and city council. Strive to maintain investments at the highest possible levels, strive to serve customers in an efficient and professional manner, and any other administrative or clerical duties as prescribed by the city manager and or the city manager. Some of our accomplishments of FY20 and FY21, we've generated over $100,000 in investment income from the investment pools, TextPool, Techstar, and TexTerm. We conducted a revenue analysis to help with the decision making at the year end, which you all were a part of, that helped increase our fund balance at the year end. In wake of many staffing adjustments during FY20, we have been able to continue operations. We've been in the process of developing a process to streamline credit card reconciliations. Been working with Bank of America to help pull that along because it's a lot of paperwork involved in credit card reconciliations, and it takes a long time to go through all those documents. And the last thing, we revamped the financial reports for the city council and city manager. So.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about overall financial goals for the city. And so this was the natural place in the course of our presentation to put this, and I'm just going to jump right into it. The first step of what we did here was to look at a strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats analysis. Boy, howdy, we are in the middle of strategic planning if we got a SWOT analysis going, okay? And so I saw Councilwoman Velasquez's head pop up. Bam, we got a SWOT analysis. I'm pretty excited. What are our strengths financially? Council leadership, community teamwork, those are the things that we brag about quite a bit. We're the city where we talk to each other, and that's a great thing. Stable fund balances across most of our funds. We saw that as we adopted our budget last year. Our partnerships have helped us do a tremendous amount that we wouldn't be otherwise able to do. Diverse revenue streams. We've got a lot going. Just creating our public improvement districts is saving us well over $150,000 a year in stormwater maintenance costs. We were creative. We came up with new revenue streams. We've got great planning, engineering, and finance team. Those are the core of who we use to create all of our long-term spending. Weaknesses, we have lower than desirable reserves. Oh my gosh. I'm going to tell you flat out, the last rating report we received from Moody's said, guys, you have got to do better with what's in your reserve. For years, council was content with what was called the charter minimum. That was a 5%. You guys took the leadership role of stepping that up to an 8%. We've achieved that. And basically, our rating agencies are saying, guys, you need to get up to about 16%. That translates about to a 60-day reserve. So we're going to talk about that, and that's just the general fund. We never really have set a policy on utility fund, but we also need a reserve there.
You know, Mike, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it's been something, you know, that has certainly been on my mind as far as the reserves and that percentage and reviewing those policies, especially as COVID-19 and the storm have hit. So appreciate you bringing that forward.
Aging city facilities, we're in 1873 city, and it shows from our roads, water, sewer, buildings, everything. We're already behind on salaries. You'll hear that during Carol's presentation, so it's not like we're starting some financial work to create reserves while we're ahead and leading the pack on salaries. We're behind on salaries, and that's going to be a difficult thing to balance. We've got a lot of obligations on the books. I often refer to that as our war debt. It took a lot of incentive work to get this hub at Spur 557, I-20, and FM 148. That's not something we should take for granted, but it does mean that a lot of those property taxes and a lot of those sales taxes are going back to pay for the infrastructure that was necessary to build all that. The private sector built that infrastructure, and so we've got to make sure that we're true to those agreements. We've got a long list of capital project needs. You'll see that in Steve Rogers' presentations, and we're underfunded in some of our maintenance tasks. One of the reasons I wanted to get that robotics presentation on streets out to you before we started our 3-year strategic plan, so that you could see where we stand from a maintenance backlog. We could talk all day about parks and the maintenance backlogs we've had in parks over the years. Opportunities, what's good? The work from home movement is probably going to be a net good for us, because we've probably got some people in Dallas County who are going to want to come here. Regional growth is absolutely tremendous. We are doing terrific. For years, I would joke that the rule of thumb for the Metroplex was to add 1 million every 10 years. We now add 1 million every 8 years or every 7 years in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. So we're doing great. You guys heard the statistic that Kaufman County was the fastest growing county in the United States by percentage in the 2019 period. We've got a great school district, great partnerships. We can make new partnerships. That's a good thing. Desirability of Texas is an opportunity. Geographic gap in medical, hospitality, and higher education sectors. You might say, oh, isn't that what's bad, right? That's actually a pretty good opportunity, because between Tyler and Dallas and Commerce and, say, Huntsville, we don't really have a lot of higher education. We've got an empty zone there of education. Same thing you can say about medical. So if we've got an empty spot there in the regional market, we feel like we can fill that with medical, with hospitality, and with higher education. Threats, the state legislature, not shy about saying that at all. The state legislature introduces way too many bills that are geared at cities and busy messing with our budget instead of cutting their own budget. That's a threat for us. That can be very, very damaging for everything that we've got as a goal here. Loss of council and or community goodwill and trust. If we lose trust with our community, then it's hard to get things done. And it doesn't take very long to look around with ERCOT and realize how bad things will get, how quickly, when you lose trust with the community you're supposed to be serving. Retail trends, that's an easy one. We've got a lot going on with different trends with retail. Uncontrolled ETJ growth, that can be very difficult, particularly with annexation state law the way that it is. What if crime came back? We've spent the last 10 years getting really very good at crime and very good at our police department. crime comes back, then that could be very damaging to our long-run financial structure. Increases to insurance rates, an unstable borrowing market. We definitely saw that during COVID, where Jason Hughes, our financial advisor, said, yeah, the interest rates are great, but no one wants municipal bonds right now. And that's not us, that's the entire municipal bond market was shut down for a few weeks during the COVID crisis. So you got to watch out for that as well. Our major themes, I won't recount them all to you. You've heard me several times. They've been in your package several times. The 5 major themes are kind of the big directions of where we would like to go. Our operational goal examples there, well, let me just say it this way. The major themes of the strategic plan are resource intensive. We don't have small goals. We've got some pretty big goals. We need the revenues and the reserve to deliver on some very high council expectations. I like being challenged with high expectations, and that's a positive thing. But we got to remind ourselves, what does that mean? We have some operational goals. Police department staff, fire department staff, catching up on staffing in municipal development and finance. Library staff, if we're going to do a new library and community center, they're going to need some more staffing there. Construction goals, streets, and streets, wastewater, water, downtown master plan, drainage master plan, parks master plan. I just listed $260 million in planning studies. That's a lot of work ahead of us over the next 30 years. Sidewalks, major TechStop partnerships, new and renovated buildings. There's a lot of expensive out in front of us. Now, let's go look at some budget modeling here. So what we did was to take our general fund, take a look at where we started FY '21, our revenues, our expenditures, and our end-of-year expectations. So we think by the time we get to the end of FY '21, we're going to have 34 days of reserve. So in a way, that's good, because it wasn't very long ago where we were more like 15 or 18 days. So hey, we're doing good, we're making good progress. This is on our way to a goal. But look at the growth factor numbers here. All we did was plug in a standard 3.5% increase in revenues, and you can see that a 2.3% growth in spending is all we can do if we want to get to 60 days of reserve by the end of our 3-year strategic plan. It's not the kind of thing that we can do in one big fell swoop, right? We're not going to add several $1 million to our reserves in 1 year. We can't afford to do that. So if you look at the average annual growth shown on here in revenues, that's basically adding $1 million a year in new revenues, but only being able to add about $700,000 in new expenditures every year. Now, I'm not saying that this is the exact dollar amounts we're going to have. It's my job to go find more revenue. It's our job to go find places that we can cut expenses as we increase other line items. But this is kind of good big picture stuff to look at to say, hey, how am I going to add $800,000 a year into our reserve? $800,000 a year into reserve is a hefty, hefty goal in order for us to get to our goal of 60 days in the bank by the time we get to FY '24. So I'm not presenting this as final. You never do in a 3-year strategic plan, but I wanted to present to you the difficulty of achieving a 60-day reserve, okay? Next slide is similar, but talks about the utility fund. I did a little looking around for different rules of thumb or different benchmarks in the utility fund world. We've always been fairly healthy in the utility fund because we've tended to have around 60 days in the utility fund. And we've done that because we were worried about the volatility of utility revenue. I don't know if Mike is, no, Mike's not here anymore, but in the utility fund, what are you worried about? You're worried about, is it a wet year? Is it a dry year? Is it a wet year? Is it a dry year? If I string several wet years together, I'm not really selling much water in July. If I have several wet years in a row, all of a sudden my revenues dry up, my expenses stay the same, and I just burn through a whole bunch of reserve pretty darn quickly. And so those are the things that you've got to worry about. So the standard benchmark recommendation from the rating agencies is really, they want to see a utility fund with 120 days of reserve. So now I'm really punching you in the stomach, right? I'm saying, man, not only in the general fund do we need to grow our reserve, but also in the utility fund we need to grow our reserve. So I don't always bear good news. This is kind of tough news, but I think if we're going to saddle up to the goals that we need to as an organization, we really need to put more emphasis onto these reserve areas. So again, this is just an example, but if we were to increase our revenues at 3.5% every year, we would only be able to increase our expenditures at 1.4% each year in order to generate the kind of reserves that we really need. So if you've got a 2.1% gap between revenues and expenditures, then you're able to accomplish that. Again, that's adding about $600,000 a year in revenue, and your expenses only get to go up about $240,000 a year in order to add $720,000 a year to your reserves. So again, not to say that you're looking at your budget over the next few years, but to say that this is essentially the challenge before us as we are working on what to do in the utility fund. The capacity analysis for non-utility fund debt. Now I'm having fun. Look at my beautiful spreadsheet here. You're going to see in Steve Rogers' presentations when it comes forward a very large list of things to build. You already heard from Shane LaCroix talking to you about building 3 new fire stations. That is not an inexpensive thing to do. So as we look at that, we're going to have to push our thinking on the debt side further than we've thought about it before. One of the reasons we want to have good reserves is that if we're going to have to go pursue some hefty borrowing, we're going to have to start thinking in this more financially constrained way. So I've got a line here that shows our INS revenue over the next several years, projecting it at a fairly simple 3.5% increase every year. And you can see that's not changing a tremendous amount. Our INS revenue is the money we have from tax-backed debt to pay for all of our borrowing that we've done in the past. So we start off with $2.2 million in revenue, and we end up at almost $2.5 million in revenue. There's just not a lot of growth there in order for us to sustain or put new debt in. Now, I'm going to let you think about something else. It's very typical for cities, the day they form a tax increment finance district, to go borrow a whole bunch of money. Now, we were the cautious city because when we formed our TIF district back in 2007, 2008, what did we do? We sat back and said, nope, the developers are going to take the risks around here, and the developers have to borrow the money, and we're going to get them paid back later. Well, that's been a great model for almost 15 years, but at some point that probably needs to change because we're kicking off enough revenue in our tax increment finance district to start to think differently about our tax increment finance district. And so you can see this analysis here. I won't go through all of the details on it. You can see the taxable value in the tax increment finance district, almost $200 million. That's the taxable value. You apply our City of Terrell property tax rates and the percentage of that goes in. We're getting about $1.1 million of property taxes from our side of the ledger. We're getting about $328,000 a year from the county side of the ledger. And now I'm to an interesting number, the commitments of the TERS. Right now, this year, your tax increment finance district is going to pay back developers about $700,000. That's our payment to the Buc-ee's Baylor deal. That's our payment to the Apache Trail deal. That's our payments to different sources, Crossroads. All of those different sources amount to about $700,000 a year. So what does that mean? Well, you don't say that everything that comes into the tax increment district is money you want to borrow against. If you were to set a 75% rate or an 80% rate, then you would have about $576,000, almost $600,000 a year of borrowing capacity. So exactly the same analysis that we've been through on the city side, right? We've just never applied that way of thinking to our tax increment refinance district. In order for us to accomplish our major building goals in the City of Terrell over the next 3 years, we're going to have to think about borrowing off of our tax increment finance district because times have changed and it's a healthy enough, large enough tax increment finance district in order to sustain that borrowing. Paddock, Similar analysis, and you've actually seen this one already because the Paddock Board's delivered its initial capital plan to you, so I'm really just recounting information that's in there. They will have about $843,000 of revenue this year, and that means the annual debt capacity is a vote that they took, that they were willing to put about $300,000 of that into debt every year. They've selected their first 2 projects. So when you see, oh, the Paddock wants to borrow money, I don't want you thinking that will come out of your INS rate. When the Paddock borrows money, that's not your property taxes and your property tax INS rate. That's your sales tax dollars from the Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation. Just like if the EDC board had borrowed money, it would go against that. So this whole slide is only to say, you know, our finances are complicated now, and in order to get as robust as we need to get, as we need to be, our finances are actually going to get more complicated. And so I'm challenging Jay Ayers here with a lot because it's not going to be a simple next 3 years. We have a lot of expectations upon us, and I want us to really do some very heavy lifting with our financial goals. Quick recap of the citywide financial ones. Build the general fund, proactively engage with our rating agencies. Jason Hughes and I have had this analysis. We've got some policies we probably need the city to adopt about how we operate with credit and with debt, and we will be able to get that to you soon. Build a sustainable financial structure that maintains our capital assets and provides for a quality workforce. Can't just do one. I'm very happy that we've got Carol presenting today as well, because you don't just build things, you employ people to run those things that you build and to maintain those things that you build. We've got to find different ways to generate revenues, maintain operating balances in every fund. I'm going to say this is going to be a theme for us in the IT fund. If I notice that the IT fund isn't really as healthy as it ought to be, I got to be creative and find new ways that we can get revenue into the information technology fund. And so that's part of our overall challenge as well. So I said a lot there, but that is some of the most important stuff we're going to cover in way of our 3-year strategic plan. So I'm going to pause there for any Q&A, and then we'll let Jay take his part of this presentation.
No, I think I like the idea of trying to get the reserves where they need to be in the next 3 years. I think that's something that we should all be supportive of, and just be aware in your ask annually that there's a lot of costs associated with running the city, and that we're going to be challenged on the revenue side. Doesn't mean we can't do it, it's just going to take some work, right?
Yes, sir.
Anybody have any comment?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Our next item on the agenda is discuss human resources.
This is, we got, Jay's got a couple of slides at the tag end of this one, yeah.
Sorry, Jay, I'm trying to rush you along. Discuss Finance Department strategic plan.
Okay, these are our operational goals. The reliance on paperwork instead of modern software methods in finance. Oh, these are some of the operational challenges that we have. Reliance on paperwork instead of modern software methods in finance and other departments. Just the move of paperwork, it kind of slows down a lot of the processes for finance. So that's something that we're trying to get out of. Not completely, just having the ability to use paper and the electronic methods. Current day-to-day team includes a staff person at the clerk level, a former employee with intermittent ability to help as a contractor, and a hired gun contractor from my accounting firm. Right now, the finance department is somewhat depleted. We have a contractor from Robert Half. She's done an exceptional job. But as you know, with contractors from very renowned accounting firms, they can be expensive. So we want to kind of move the process along and bring in some new employees into finance. Our individual bank account clearing funds, our accounting system codes, our investment fund deposits, and our budget categories are not aligned. That's something that I've been working on a lot, getting those straightened out. We have a big city demands for compliance, reporting, planning, and transparency placed on the small city staff team, which I hope to increase our team here in the future. The city is due to rotate its consultant internal auditor and its outside audit firm. We've had Patillo, Brown, and Hill for a while. doing our routine audits, and Frank, our current internal auditor, he's been here for a long time, so it's probably time to actually look into replacing both the firm and our internal auditor. Strategic plan for FY '22, '23, and '24, identify and take advantage of opportunities for cost savings and efficiencies. Want to develop recommendations to reduce expenditures, conduct a process improvement study on revenue collections, and prepare a recommendation to develop a pilot project for a citywide inventory management system. Definitely need to try to get a hold of the inventory here. We got a bunch of things that probably need to be accounted for that haven't. That's something that I'm also working on. And right now, finance is taking on the cell phones, but we definitely need to change our cell phone procurement system. Implementation of policies, procedures, and practices to ensure resiliency. We want to provide training that results in organizational standard of administrative governance and financial core companies for employees. Provide coordinated support and training to departments in order to sustain and improve the organizations towards data-driven governance, and update the city's fund balance and reserve policy to account for a general fund balance beyond the current policy, which aligns with what we're trying to do in increasing the fund balance. This here is pretty much what I envision for finance as a whole, our unit. I hope to bring in an accounting manager, replace the accounts receivable technician with an accountant, and bring along a budget and capital planning analyst. Right now we have Maria, she's working as our accounts payable technician. Our internal audit function is an outside contractor, and the current budget provides direct and two tech positions, goes to fill the vacant, well, I already talked about that, I'm sorry. Okay, and this pretty much just sums up our 3-year goals for 22, 23, and 24 fiscal years. So, any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Dan. Next item on the agenda is discuss Human Resources Department Strategic Plan. This is Carol Holland.
So, Mayor and Council, while Carol gets ready, I'll just say thank you to Jay. I think there's a lot of work on and responsibilities on Jay's shoulders, and he's doing a good job tackling all that. Myra, can you switch out the PowerPoint so that it's human resources? Great for us to tackle human resources on the same night we're talking finances, because there's a lot of challenges that are all embedded in this. I'd like to remind folks that we've got a $29 million annual general fund budget, and about $16 million of that is on labor. So it's easy to say that our the thing we value most around here, just money-wise, is clearly the staff that is necessary to run the whole thing. So anyway, take it away, Carol.
Oh, thank you very much, Mayor and Council. And it's good to see you, Mary Gail. I haven't seen you, so it's good to see old heads like me. Just a real quick preamble. Of all the 19 departments that are within the city, they existed prior to my tenure beginning in 1989. This is personnel, human resources is the only department that was birthed in 1989. We had others who were doing some functions, but there was never a personnel department. So any critique, it's my baby. Any issues, it's me. So I was the one, I'm responsible for all of that. So I just wanted to give you that quick preamble. The mission statement is the actual structure for my department. We are actually structured to be unstructured, because there are never 2 days, there are never 1 day or 2 days that are the same within HR. So with that being said, the Human Resources Department shall provide an equitable hiring process for all candidates to ensure each department is presented qualified candidates capable of performing the required specialized and general tasks within each department. And that changed over time because we are very complicated now. We are small in number, but there are so many employment laws, there are so many compliance regulations, there are so many regulatory agencies above us that we can no longer just have a person, a layperson that is not equipped to handle day one, to hit the ground running, what each department needs. So that's why the hiring process is so intense and it takes a while. These are some of the successes in fiscal year 20 and 21, so forth. One success that I didn't enumerate was the addition of my staff. And sitting in the back is Hilda Villanueva, who I've known since I was 9 and she was 11. So we have a long relationship, and she knows me and I know her. And when we together with Mario, we were able to accomplish these bullet points. We were able to sit at the table and we discussed the market salary deficiency, and with the approval of the council through the city manager, we were able to, in 20, adjust our current comp plan 3.5%. Although it's still behind the market, it was a strive towards accomplishing each department being on market. There was a creation and an implementation of the education certification program. Again, we are very specialized, so we have employees who brought and are bringing to the table more certifications. They're highly educated, so there is a program where we can debate the amount of it. There is a program to award employees for what they're bringing outside of what we require. We've also we've had claims, EEOC complaints in the past. I will say with the city attorney and myself, I counted up, we are 12-0 with defending claims. So Mary Gail has helped me a lot in making sure that we document. So we're good with that. So we were able to successfully defend, we had an age and gender discrimination that the EEOC, Equal Opportunity Employment, came in. We talked about it. They looked at all of our documentation and paperwork and decided that it was basically a nuisance and that there was no finding on the city. I presented, along with the legal department, an edit of the personnel code that was in the ordinance, and we were able to synchronize that to make sure that it's in compliance with our city charter and also the employee handbook. And we have reduced and added two other uses of money for the city of Terrell. We were able to reduce our annual workers' comp premium because it correlated to the reduction in on-the-job injuries through an establishment now of an aggressive risk management safety program that's headed up by, well, the arm of it is Mario Hernandez, with us collectively designing a safety program where more authority was given to him to put a visual on the field operators. If they are not in compliance, he has the authority to shut them down until they come into compliance with our safety protocol. Again, thinking on the fly, we are structured to be unstructured. When the COVID-19 pandemic began, there was not a contagious disease policy that guided us. So through collaboration, I was able to design a preliminary program based on the Center for Disease Control protocol to help us along so that our exposure would not affect the day-to-day services. Of course, we've had cases, but we have not compromised service to the public in any way. And then also, everyone needs to grow. So we have, through the council and the city manager, putting money in a line item for facilitators, I was able to present what I call soft skill training sessions in 20. One topic was sexual harassment, and the other one was facilitated by Dr. Pamela Johnson, And then we also had exemplary customer service facilitated by Ms. Joy Reed. And that was citywide, and all employees participated. So that's a great segue into what's important to employees. Salaries, or what I call non-wage inducements and perks. Of course, employees who work here, they know that we're servant leaders, and we cannot always be as aggressive as private America. So we can't pay you basically what you think your worth is, because the pie is just so large. So what we do is we offer other incentives that you don't see in private America. You don't see basically a family-friendly environment. What we do is we allow you to bring your children to work. Of course, that can't be disrupted, but we've watched families, we've watched individuals birth children, and now they are seniors, and it's as though they were family. We allow employees to use some of their personal time to pick up their children and situate them before they return to work, using what we call the break time. So you can't put a monetary value on it, but if you were to go to private America and that was not afforded you, you would see the significance of having to call somebody to make those arrangements, as opposed to leaving and being able to make those arrangements yourself. So that's what I call that family-friendly environment. We encourage through professional growth. We encourage each person to learn their skill, to grow. Now we have the education and certification program, but prior to that, there was growth within your grade. You may start out as a maintenance worker 1, and you could go all the way up to a maintenance worker 3, depending on experience and your level of your level of credentials that you have. Maybe you have now a driver's license grade A, which will allow you to operate more sophisticated equipment. So then you will be in a higher grade. So we haven't always encouraged that. Mutual respect, that speaks for itself. No one is going to work in a place, I believe, that's toxic. And we have respect for one another's departments and also that individual, by the way that we treat one another. There's pride in the satisfaction in public service. There's just pride in helping people, and that's what we do as servant leaders, and that's what we drive home, that you are a servant leader. That's what you do. You help people. And then, of course, that goes connect to pride in your job, and then your own personal motivation. And of course, the big thing is our health and retirement benefits. Texas Municipal Retirement System that was implemented in the city of Terrell in 1970 is now, we are either number 1 or number 2. We vacillate with a city in Washington State that is the number 1 retirement plan in America. And that is told when I take employees who are migrating towards retirement, and they go to the retirement meeting, and they are shown the data, how lucrative our TMRS program is. So we are at maximum contribution, 7%, and the employer, the city, we put in 14%, well, 16.9% now because we had some catch-up. But that benefit, along with just the pride in who you are, has helped us to maintain, I think, a stable and retain a stable workforce. Questions?
No, you're doing good, Terrell. Thank you.
And that's just a big emoji of what I just talked about. And then, of course, I ran through just my version of what cultivate a culture that matches the citizens' needs and the next generation of employees. We're more technical. We're more fast-moving. but we cannot lose the basic of why we're here, which is going to be human beings that breathe and need our help. So we ensure that those employees, the new generation, they still have that baseline of understanding that we are servant leaders. So, again, this is where I am at my most in advocating for a workforce that reflects the community in which it serves. The demographics of Terrell is split between Caucasians, African Americans, Latino, non-Hispanic, and then Asian Americans and other. And we have that citizenry in the city of Terrell. And my goal is to ensure that demographic is reflected with the city of Terrell. And we have diversity in every department, not as prevalent and reflective as you may see, but each department is diverse, either with female, with gender, or a race component. And that's something that is very, very unique to have every department that's diverse so far. And we have that.
I'm going to just pause here for a minute and say, okay, one of the most important things we're going to do over the next 3 years is some of these steps Carol's got on here. I would really like a third-party review of what I'd call the rule books that Carol has here, a third-party review of our hiring processes, how we advertise everything, because it's great to take a moment with somebody from the outside coming in, taking a look at us as an organization and saying, hey, you know, there's another city that has figured this trick out to get a non-traditional candidate in. Maybe you didn't go to the best college. Maybe you didn't immediately leave high school and say, you know what, I've always wanted to be a fireman. I'm going to go straight on in and get my fire license. You know, maybe you bounced around a little bit. Maybe you're a non-traditional candidate and we need to find a way to get you in. Maybe we can get more diversity by tweaking our rule book and tweaking our systems. So what you'll see in next year's budget is an opportunity to vote on putting some money into some third-party review of these things. I think that's a very important element of what we're doing. And then once we get that work done, I'd like to get our supervisors trained on this so that they can do a really good job handling this goal that Carol set out for us.
Yeah, and thank you, Mike. That's a great segue. And that on the third-party review, a lot of times if you need a different lens. And I want to ensure that policies are not written to eliminate. And that's the best way. That's the best description that I can give it. Because if you have to make sure that your policy is liberal and generalized enough to ensure that it's embracing the non-traditional employee or the non-traditional candidate. So I asked Mike for that budget line item to be able to bring in an outside consultant to review our departmental policies.
So I want to put reality to this because this might seem like, well, okay, this is very hard to put your fingers on. What are we really talking about? So I'm going to give you this example. If I require, as we really just had to do to make a step up in our fire department, if I require you to be a paramedic in order to enter the fire department, there was a time and place for that. And Shane LaCroix and I have talked about this. When he first showed up, we had 1 paramedic. Now we have 12 paramedics. So he's done an amazing job. Carol's done an amazing job getting a group of paramedics into our operations and getting guys trained, and getting them out there and deployed. Well, if I've got 12 paramedics, maybe I could increase diversity in my fire department by eliminating the paramedic requirement, but having a pot of funds so that when somebody gets hired in, we say, okay, big guy, you got, or big lady, whatever, maybe I shouldn't say that. Now I got comedy going here, I'm sorry. You know, okay.
I'm awake now.
You hire, yeah, now I'm gonna get in trouble. You say, okay, newly hired candidate. Okay, newly hired candidate, we're gonna send you to fire school. We're gonna send you to paramedic school. You've got 9 months, 12 months, a period of time And if you can accomplish getting your certifications, you can get your fire certification, you can get your paramedic certification, great. We've paid you to work for us for 12 months, 9 months, whatever it might be, and you can keep your job. But if you don't achieve that paramedic license by X date after your employment, then we gave you a chance, we sent you to school, we paid your salary, and we're not going to have you work for us anymore. That's us giving a fair shot, and it's what Carol's talking about when we say, are we welcoming somebody and trying to make people successful? If I have a pool of money to work with that is essentially the training pool to take somebody who came in and their credentials were low and they need to achieve higher credentials, and we give them that chance to get into our organization and be successful, we think we can maybe take some non-traditional candidates like that to make those folks successful and increase the diversity of our organization. So that's sort of what that idea is about, to put it in really distinct terms, making a big change in some place like the fire department to say, you know what, you don't have to be a paramedic, but you better be motivated enough to pass that paramedic exam after we send you to school for some number of months so that you can achieve that. That's an example, a real-world example about what Terrell's talking about. And you can imagine that kind of opportunity in a variety of our departments.
Right, and that's just, and again, I'm glad, and it's for the department directors and supervisors to recognize. And a case, just a personal case, me, as a department director, there was a job opening, and I could not communicate with Hispanic applicants. And then the person who was bilingual was out doing something else. So I made a conscious effort whenever I had an opportunity to expand. I'm going to have someone in my office that's bilingual, because a person should be comfortable speaking in their native language. That's why I made sure that my department was diverse to address those needs. So and that's the vision that I want for other departments, to be able to move away from self and engage in the non-traditional candidates.
Okay, so before we move on to the next slide, Carol, I have two thoughts that come to mind. One is diversity training. I believe it's been mentioned that we have some sort of diversity training for established employees. Is that correct?
We do. It is on a rotating schedule. The two that I offered in 20, the sexual harassment and customer service, were at that time more of a need than diversity, but diversity training is very much a part of the repertoire of what I offer to employees.
Is that something that, is like you log online to a portal for employees? Is that, you offering the training? Is that bringing somebody else in?
Well, there's two versions. Public service, police and fire, they are required to have diversity training just because of the interaction with the community. But for us as public servants, I bring a facilitator in and so that I can have allow one-on-one conversations and questions that an employee may have. So there's two versions. Mine is citywide, and it is a live person. Training for the police and fire is sometimes virtual, or they may go to a facility. But their requirement under their regulatory agent is different than what I require for the city.
Mm-hmm.
So it's two components.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. My second question is around, how often do we update through human resources and each department, each staff member? I guess I'll call it like a competency checklist, whether it includes different segments on a competency checklist you've completed. Your trainings like sexual abuse, diversity training, but then these are the tasks that you have to prove or we have to see that you accomplish. Kind of what Mike was going back to, you were hired to do X job that requires these skills, and we've observed you successfully doing these skills. How often do we update those, or is that something that we have on file for our employees?
Now, in a global, just globally, we have evaluations that different departments perform on their personnel. But we don't have a checklist to make sure that you followed all of the tenets of customer service. The flip side of that, if there is a complaint that you did not treat an employee treat a citizen or another employee or your fellow person with respect, that reflects on you did not embrace the customer service training that you received. So the flip side of it is if it reveals that you are presenting yourself in a way that is not conducive to how we conduct ourselves, that shines a different light. But the evaluation, a part of that component of that rating is how you treat others, and there are bullet points that are rated.
And I'll also just sort of say that where we're good at this is within the first 6 months, we're excellent at hiring somebody and saying, nope, this is a guy or a lady who is a bad fit in our organization. Because we do a good job with our supervisors saying, here's what I need of you the first 6 months. This is what I need for you to do. And if you don't make it, you've not successfully done it. And we're very clear on that side of it. I think if I've been here for 5 years and now I'm wondering what I need to do with my career for the next, years of 6 through 10 of my career, I don't think we're very good at that. I think we need more there, and I think that part of what we're doing with education and certification is really going to be the key to sort of answering that part of it.
Like I said, my question was more on the first, and then if I'm understanding this correctly, and maybe I'm missing some gaps here. So if we have, I think if we're rating our employees or doing a kind of maybe, I could assume it's like an end of the year assessment, or was it the 6-month assessment? Or how often do those?
It's a 6-month assessment, and we have not been as vigilant. It was actually annually. But because of some changes in the management structure, we hadn't been as vigilant in requiring evaluations. I think might be a preliminary evaluation of department directors when he became city manager, and made recommendations for each employee, each department director to elevate themselves. And as we move forward, that hasn't been on a rotating basis, but we have a baseline to know what his expectations are. And I guess the opposite of that would be if he called you and he gave you a pink slip, then you're not doing what he tells you to do. So to answer your question, yes, we ensure that employees are meeting the philosophy of the council and the city manager through the process of if you're not called in, then you're doing your job.
I'm sure COVID-19 has presented some challenges too.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
I guess
we can debate.
That's why we've kind of fallen behind a little.
Yeah, we can debate
Right.
on reasons. It's just that, we are growing and we're so complicated with that. Some of those areas that we need to be more vigilant on, it's been almost a process of if you are not, you'll know it. But as long as you are performing in a way that's acceptable and above customer service standards, then you're still here.
So we don't have a end-of-the-year evaluation for all employees based on goals that were set.
Who was the first city attorney that was a woman?
I'm going to answer that by saying we have the goal of doing that. We're not as excellent at successfully doing that as we ought to be.
Right. It's in place. I mean, and it's not the end of the year. It's annual. Your date of hire, but we have not been we've been lax in making sure that it gets done.
Just wondering, because I think in most roles I've had a annual review,
Right.
Whether it's first or fifth year, and
Well, I was just date of hire, but we've not been as demanding, for lack of a better word, and making sure that it happens. But for myself, and I think in some more department directors, we evaluate employees visually all the time, making sure that they're doing what we require of them. And of course, they need to know. You need that feedback. But again, it's if there hasn't been a conversation, then we haven't. You're okay. But we need to put that in. We need to extract that and put that on paper.
Right, in way of keeping the ball rolling here, let me also say, I think the next PowerPoint slide touches on this, because one of the things that Carol has wanted to do, and I completely support this, is to do an update of the employee handbook. And that's a great place to sort of get a little bit of that pushed through and make that a little bit more efficient of a process. So maybe you tell us a little bit about this slide?
Yeah, you cannot, my policies, when you write a policy, is to be forward thinking, because life changes every day. So in the review and updating of the employee handbook, I've presented this to you probably the last 14, 15 months. But I am waiting for, there is new employment law that we are bounded by, and I'm waiting for this legislative session to pass that before I put that in print, because if I do it now, that policy again is going to be obsolete, and I will be editing and editing. So I'm waiting for this legislative session to end, because there are House bills with employment law that is going to affect how we operate and how we maintain. Questions?
I'm going to tag on, and I'm going to take 60 seconds, tag on off Mayrani and say, hey, I hope that we do get better at annual job reviews. I think it's important. I hear your date of hire, and certainly the city world is different than private world. Man, I think that's a hard process, right? And for me, maybe Mayrani, it's every August I'm going to get a self-evaluation. Every September, my boss is going to fill it out. Every November, we're going to have a discussion. That's it. Just every year, same thing over and over again. So I hope, maybe we just, I'm not saying we have to do it that way, but I would encourage it, even though I do know everyone's always under evaluation. And in kind of a note to council, I think we've done it in the past with diversity training and sexual harassment training. Man, I think it's good that we've offered it in the past. Man, private sector is almost going, for legality purposes, is almost going to I don't know about Mayrani, I have to do it every year. I mean, I sit through it is a whoop of a process. It is 3 or 4 hours in front of a computer screen talking about how Bob and Sally can't hug and stuff like that, and ethics, but it's every year, and it's really, I know it's for legality type purposes, and diversity training is its own set of, that just provides good things. So I guess that's me saying, hey, city manager, I'm in support of dollars that way, right? Because you can't do it unless the council helps you along there.
Listen, we obviously all agree on this point. I would say that the method is probably something that we need to change a little bit, because we've had the method very much trying to get conversation between staff, facilitate group meetings. Well, that's a higher bar than what I think you guys might be referring to, and which I've done with Trinity Valley Community College, which is you log in and you take basically, I think of it as a Canvas class, right? You take a class, and that class may only take you 4 hours or 2 hours or an hour or half an hour, whatever it is, but by watching the videos, punching the buttons, answering the questions correctly but not incorrectly, and going through all of the training, you end up saying, okay, this employee has gone through this process. Now, for us, there's challenges there, because not all of our employees are computer-centric folks. Some of our employees are not day-to-day in front of a computer at all, and so there might be some challenges there for them. There might be some challenges there with staff who, as I said, we try to have bilingual staff, so I don't want to disadvantage them by putting them through an English language first program like that. But anyhow, the point is, if we're going to deliver all the diversity training we want and deliver all the training we want, some of it is going to have to transition to being online, because that's just what we can afford, and that's our simpler methods and that sort of thing. So, I'm going to try to bring us back up to the point that this is we're talking about a 3-year strategic plan right now. Let's talk about details of how we do these things whenever we move into annual budget step. On this particular slide, the only last thing I want to mention is, if I'm going to have a diverse workforce, and I'm going to have a millennial workforce and a Gen Z workforce, the hassle factor of everything you do has to get better. Because an old guard employee like me, I realize I could fill out paper and I could get a thing done. A 25-year-old that we hire wants to be able to punch buttons to get it done. And we have to grow up for that. We have to make those changes, because I want you to be a happy employee. I don't want you to come here and say, wow, I didn't realize there was a DOS-based way of doing this, right? We have to change with our generations. They change. So anyway, that's a point there. And Terrell?
I guess, and again, you are correct, and before I finish up, we are vigilant enough and forward-thinking enough to know that we are going to have the generations difference in the way that tasks are performed. But one thing that we cannot get away from is that we are municipal government, and the regulatory agencies above us do not always allow us to move as quickly as some of the other private sectors move. A case in point, it's the way that we accept applications. We know that you can download them and sign them, but for us, for the legal standpoint, we run extensive backgrounds. And when something comes up and we make a decision to eliminate you, they will say, I didn't give you permission to run a background on me. I have to have their signature. And that's why I call them in. And we have had employees who have committed class state felonies, and we would not have been able to find that information out and verify it and make it a valid point had they not signed. And when I call over to legal, and that's the first question Mary Gail says, ask me, were you authorized to do that? And by the back of my application, the answer is yes. So I can't always move with the 21st century in the way, if we want to have a workforce that we give so much power to go out on private property. We have to know who we're sending out. We need to know who that person is. And that's why we are so meticulous in finding out that information. I think that I've already talked about issues, but moving forward, what I would like to see over the next 3 years is for us to maintain our current benefit program or enhance it. And that's going to cost money. Ensure that our workforce reflects our community. There are internal incentives that we can make available to employees, because a experienced, educated employee would benefit us as an organization. And I would like to see our program for tuition reimbursement enhanced to whatever dollar amount is feasible and productive. Also enhance the auto allowance, because we are out more. We have exceeded. We are not in alliance with other auto allowances in our area. We've also annexed more area, so employees are going further and using their own private vehicles. And I would also like to see an upgrade in our education certification program. Of course, I've already talked about maintaining, updating the handbook to make sure that it will encompass the vision as the world changes. And then, of course, I'm very adamant about the third-party eye that I would like to come in and review our policies to make sure that they are free of any language that eliminates employees from being all that they can be, and also in hiring and ensuring that we are diverse.
All right, Terrell, we're going to take a 5-minute recess real quick.
Yeah.
Then we'll get into this.
5 to 10 minutes, because I'll be done in 2 more slides.
I know, but
Yeah, I'm saying, go ahead. I mean, it's not gonna stop me, I mean, what I'm saying is not gonna be long.
I gotta beat him to the rest.
I didn't even know I had a candy desk on monitor.
Oh, you do?
I didn't.
See, we learn new things.
No.
Last meeting, I tore through them.